Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And this episode is brought to you by my very own sponsors, which is BCW Supplies. Use code POPAnimeComics to get 10% off your entire order when you shop. Comics are expensive, and protecting your comics are also expensive. So save yourself 10% off. I actually just placed an order, and I saved myself $10 buying some bags and boards, as well as my very own t-shirt up in Redbubble. Yes, my guests might enjoy what this is referencing, but it's referencing Fallout, it's referencing Taco Bell, Gundam, Amuro Ray, obviously, as well as the most interesting man in the world. You can pick up that t-shirt right now on Redbubble in 16 different colors, so go check it out. And without further ado, I have with me cosplayer Suzie Cosplays. So welcome to the show.
Hi.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited because I enjoy several of your cosplays. I enjoy your Avatar: The Last Airbender, Suki cosplay. I enjoy your Sailor Moon cosplay and your Sailor Mercury cosplays. And we're going to talk about all of that. But I am curious how you got into cosplay because every cosplayer has a different story on how they got into the craft.
Oh gosh. So I guess when I was a little person, a tiny child,
A toddler.
dress up. Well, yeah, I mean, like dress up was like a normal, like a thing we played. My mom always had tons of costumes around for us to just play with and entertain ourselves and not be in her way. So, um, and she always wanted us to like make our own Halloween costumes and be creative and stuff like that. But then when the actual when this like progressed into cosplay, I was probably around like 20, and at like my first real job, just an idea that my boss wanted to do for the summer party, because it was a small company. There were like 12 of us. He was like, let's go to Fan Expo. Let's get a limo for the day and let's all go to Fan Expo. And so I went like in, just my normie Batman t-shirt and stuff, and I had a blast. It was great. And then it was probably like a couple years before I went to another one, like long after I had left that company. But I did decide to wear a costume the next time I went, and it was like a Halloween store Miss Marvel costume I got off the internet because she was my favorite character in the Facebook game Avengers Alliance at the time, which was like a turn-based combat game. And she was one of my favorite fighters in it, so I was her, and it was loads of fun. And then it was probably a couple years before I went to a con again, but like third time around, I was like pretty. I think was it. No, it would have been like my fourth, I guess, because there was another one in between that where I went as a normie again, and then I did Anime North as Sailor V, and that was really, really fun. So I was kind of hooked after that.
So let's talk about that first one because that's the one I think everybody wants to know about. Obviously, that's the one that I sort of spotted you on. And what was this like? Because this was, I think, Sailor V was the first one you built.
Yeah. Like the first like big build I had, I did like some Fallout Halloween costumes prior to that,
The
but
first
they were
real build, you could call it.
yeah,
How does that sound?
that's a very fair statement. The first Sailor V version 1 was like I used hockey equipment. That is hockey equipment that I spray painted white, and you can't really tell in the photo, but it's coated in glitter. It is glitter coated. And it was very, very sparkly and shiny and warm. It was very warm, and it was very hot that day. So
Let's talk about it because obviously people love Sailor Moon, they love Sailor V. I think
yeah,
Sailor V became more popular when Sailor Moon Crystal came to the U.S. and the
yeah,
region happened because my recollection, I'm 29. I
yeah,
remember parts of the original Sailor Moon. I don't remember all of it, but I remember parts of it, and I don't remember Sailor V.
yeah,
But when Crystal came to the U.S. and to North America, and I guess to the rest of the world outside of Japan, obviously it became very popular. So what was the inspiration to do Sailor V? And then we're
So
gonna dive into all of it. I promise.
Sailor V is like a fun story because she was like the prototype for the Sailor Moon comics. Basically, like the author started writing that manga first, and then it was like, I guess, the studio saw that she had like some really good ideas but needed, I guess, some more guidance. So they kind of like, she published like the first volume's worth, and then they kind of like rebooted the series with Sailor Moon. And so Sailor V is actually like its own comic book that came first. And uh so like halfway through it, you start seeing like Sailor Moon characters sprinkled in the background because that's when the two series started running concurrently. And in the original Sailor Moon cartoons, she's just like a superhero in a video game a lot of the time until Sailor Venus shows up. So
So,
I
so,
read the
so
manga. I loved her. She's cute and she's fun and gets less attention than the other scouts. So I was like, gotta be her.
to even talk about that, because legitimately 10, 15 years ago, there was no Sailor V at a con.
Yeah.
And then obviously now there's a lot more Sailor V. There's a lot more Sailor Moon mashup. There's a lot more Sailor Moon cosplays just by nature. You go to an anime
Mhm.
con, you go to a Comic Con, there's going to be a Sailor Moon, if not 10 or 15 of them.
Yep.
So, what was this like really choosing to do Sailor V though? Because still, while Sailor V is now a lot more popular than it was 15, 20 years ago, it is still less popular. And so, what was
Yeah, and
that
I think the
like?
big thing was that I wanted to do her because I hadn't seen it done yet. And not that I had been to a lot of conventions to see that yet, but I was like, I love her and she deserves to be loved. So let's do Sailor V. and
So,
and
so,
now it's kind of turned into, okay, let's do all the scouts in order of appearance, if if I ever get around to it, because that's going to take forever. But slight dream is to just have a closet of the whole, all of them. And if someone's ever like, we need one more scout, and I'm, which one?
we're gonna get into Sailor Moon and as well as Mercury and all that stuff in a second. But and I'm actually very curious, because one of the things that I now appreciate, and I'm not a cosplayer, but I enjoy cosplay. I think it's fascinating. Is when somebody says, "I want to do a character that doesn't get attention,"
Yeah,
because everybody does Harley Quinn, everybody does Batman, everybody does Superman. But it's kind of nice when you have a character that people recognize but also isn't really cosplayed. I mean, Black Canary is overplayed
yeah,
massively. But then again, if you have somebody who does Cyborg from Teen Titans, and I'm a huge Teen Titans fan, that's why I use that example. I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere here because I know this character, but I've seen like 3 cyborgs in my
hmm
entire 15 years ago in the cons. And so, what is that like for you? Because Sailor V is recognizable where somebody's like, okay, I know this is thing related to Sailor Moon. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's Sailor Moon related. And then there's not somebody at that con who's a Sailor
yeah.
V per se.
So I guess like one of the parts of it that I find fun is that, like, if you're not the main character and you're like a side character, you're probably going to bump into lots of the main character. And then it's really fun to just like stand beside a stranger and be doing a thing together. Which is kind of a weird thing, but it just makes for like lots of really fun interactions. Or I've seen lots of people do the Cabbage Man from Avatar. Like 2 or 3 guys I've seen do the Cabbage Man, and
Oh,
every
I've
time it
sold
just
that.
makes me laugh so hard. Because like everyone's always happy to see the Cabbage Man because you're like, oh man, there he is, my favorite background character.
That's an expensive Pop Funko. It's an expensive Pop Funko, and I know
I
because I sold
bet.
3 of them. I sold 3 of them, and I sold each of them for over $80 a pop.
Wow.
And I have mine for myself, everybody, so don't ask. Um, yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. It's a pricey one. It's one of the
I
more
was so
expensive
thrilled.
avatars.
I found all the 5 main boys from Saint Seiya in the same place earlier this year. I was like, I got the whole squad.
I know that realm. I know that entire hunt. I know all that, and I'm out of the Pop Funko game.
Yeah.
I bring in maybe I sell 5. I bring in 1. Um, I just got a Piccolo driving exam Pop Funko, which is the funniest Pop Funko ever. But I digress. Um, and even to dive further into Sailor V, because there's an armor version that you did of her as well.
Yes, yes, I
And I
made
have pictures of
I
that
made
too.
the armor properly. Yes, that's the version 2, the better version. That was a test wear because that's just my regular hair. But that is the better version of the armor. I still have that armor. I could probably wear it again. I would maybe replace the bow on the outfit before I did again though, because I know how to make way prettier ones than that now.
So what prompted you to do the armor version of her as well? Because
um,
obviously it gets fascinating when you
yeah.
start adding to cosplays and characters evolve obviously
Yeah,
throughout
so
anime.
she does wear armor in the comics, and it is like, and it's funny. There's like a part where she's got like um, her disguise tool. I forget what it's called, but she has a disguise tool. It's Sailor Moon gets one too, the disguise pen when she has it, but Sailor V's is something else. I think it's just her crescent mirror, but she has disguise powers. And at one point, she's like, you know, actually, now that I think about it, the armor that she gets in it looks a lot like Saint Seiya Gold Cloth. But she gets an armor like that for a couple of seconds because she's like, well, this outfit isn't going to do much. And then she's like, I can't move. And then, turns back into her regular outfit. But it was largely that it was a new skill I had just learned. And I wanted to take my outfit out again to another con, which I chose a winter one, which was a terrible idea for that outfit because it was very cold. But uh, I wanted to try my hand at making some armor, and it turned out pretty well for the my skill level at the time. So I was quite happy with it. It's still
So to even talk about that, because armor building is a very, very interesting skill set. And I have never done it. I have no desire to do it. I am not, again, as I stated, I am not a cosplayer. I wore a cosplay twice that I bought off of eBay that was tailored for me, but I don't have the patience. But I know armor building is massively tricky, whether you're using EVA foam or Warbler, or you're molding or using something else. I know people who use metal, which is kind of crazy.
crazy.
But there's a reason why the person I know is using metal. It's more Mandalorian Merc stuff.
Ah,
So
cool.
yeah, he's a very, very interesting individual. He's waiting on his I think 504 Legion card, which is super cool.
Sweet.
He's from Australia too, which is dope. But one of those things. What is that like of you even figuring out how to do armor, because it is massively tricky, and there's also the
Yeah,
problem you want to be
it's
able to spin
definitely
it.
complicated. There are like some pretty good books and tutorials to get you started. My husband gifted me like I think she only had like 8 books at the time. Only 8. Like Conway Cosplay's first 8 books or so. So I read those, and that was kind of like what, you know, because she lays a lot out of it and like very pretty easy to follow steps.
It's
So that
not
was
a
like a
book,
good way
guys.
to go.
It's a manual to help you build your
They
costumes.
really kind of are actually. Like it's a pretty solid like get you started guide and teach you how to pattern the stuff. And I did pattern that one. I've done some stuff with like patterns that I made and that other people made before. Um, Depends what you're making. It's like it is nice if you have a pattern because it makes the job faster.
Oh, I know. I've sold patterns from Cosplay magazine for like $12, and I was thrilled because it paid for my magazine.
Yeah,
Somebody else was happy. Everybody was thrilled. It was a good outing for all. Everybody was
yeah,
thrilled because I got to read my magazine for free. Somebody got a pattern. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll sell it to you for $12. I was asking
yeah.
15.
It's a great
I'll do it
deal.
for 12. Free shipping. Great deal for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. So I like. Yeah, it was mostly that I wanted to learn armor building, and armor building it's fun. You work with like questionably safe glue, but it's fun. And it is like really cool to just, especially when you're working with foam, because it's like, oh, you just fold it here and here and some foam origami, and suddenly it's a thing. It's it's a thing that was not here before, and it's a neat process. It's really a lot of steps, but a neat process.
Because obviously, and then also there's a big debate going on, and I'm 29, and I'm not going to ask you how old you are. You
I'm
could
also
voluntarily,
29.
but you remember you must at the very least at a point where it was almost purists with cons where you couldn't mash up a character and your armor had
Yeah,
to be uncomfortable.
there
Where
are a few of those around. Yeah, they're
so
a
I've been
little.
going to cons since I was 13. So I've been going for almost 16 years. Um, and one of the things is that when I first started going, and I used to live in New York, I live in Connecticut now, and I've been at cons in DC, but my first was like Anime Fest New York. And there were people who were like in big armor, and you could tell that they were uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And there's been a massive shift where now there's been a level of comfort added to cosplays that has taken what I call pure accuracy off. And
yeah,
that's not an attack, but I think there's been a destigmatizing. And I'm very curious your opinion on that because obviously I see it as a consumer and it doesn't bother me one way or the other, you know, but at the same time, like I don't care. But what is that like for you as a cosplayer? Because that's a new thing in
yeah.
cosplay.
I would say I am like much less of. I'm gonna use the word stickler than most people. Like I see lots like all the time. You'll see people and I'm like, you should have picked better shoes for that. Like they might have been less accurate, but I would have picked different shoes for it. I have something that one of my surprise outfits I'm working on. I have some very tall shoes to wear for it, so that I can be like 6 feet tall to stand beside my tall friends and be the same height as them for that character, but I'm not going to wear those to cons. I have a different pair of shoes for cons that are flat, and because I might not necessarily be standing beside those taller people, so it won't matter, right? And I've also like, if you have a character with hair down to their knees, like it it's better to wear a shorter wig than to have a rat's nest hanging off your back. So like
So
it's gonna look better all day if it's shorter, even if it's less accurate.
let's even talk about this, and then I'm going to ask you something before we get into the Sailor Moon and Sailor Mercury. So actually, I'm curious, but one of the things that obviously I view cosplay has sort of created a fork. There's actually
Hmm.
three forks that have occurred. There's con cosplay, and con cosplay also forks where you have I just want to walk around as this character, have a good
Yep.
time, or then there's competing, or you're in a booth as a
Yeah.
booth cosplayer, which is
Yep.
different because then you're working, or if you're
Yeah.
competing, chances are you're not wearing your con that cosplay out and about in the con.
Yeah.
You're
Or not
wearing
until like the next day, usually.
I've spoken to people who compete. Some of them wear it only like for like an hour
Yeah.
before they compete.
Yeah. Well,
So
I've
it,
seen unwearable ones in competitions. Like I saw these people with a giant robot that took like 6 people to carry.
and then there's that, but then also the other two forks is Instagram or closet cosplays or
Yep.
Instagram cosplays that have come about, and then there's also the photo shoot stuff, which
Yep.
anything goes in that point because you're on set for a photo shoot, but you're
Hmm.
not at a con, you're not dealing with people except the people there, which I
Yeah.
think makes sense when you're wearing shoes that might add a foot and a half to your height, for instance, because
Yep.
while you're still moving around, you're not at a con.
Yeah. I have seen people wear like with the tall deer shoes. Those are crazy. Or deer, like the satyr feet, the hoof shoes. That it looks crazy. I've seen people wear them to cons, and
You
I
mean
can't
like stripper
imagine.
wedges? Is
Um,
how I feel for that?
not even like stripper wedges. It's like they'll be, I mean, kind of a little bit. Like you probably could use them as the base, but it's like a stripper wedge without the heel. And it like pushes their knees really far forward when they're walking, and usually they're doing it to have like satyr legs, basically. Like like people with goat legs satyrs. I think that's
You
what they're
learn
called.
something every day. You learn something every day.
To look like Mr. Tumnus from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, like that.
You learn
And
something every day.
yeah, and usually it makes them very, very tall. Some sort of animal legs is typically what they're going for.
So many questions. So many questions. So little time. This could become a very X-rated show and very, very been like a minute and a half.
Not,
Right?
I wasn't at the furry convention. This was the regular one. It was at like Fan Expo. I saw them.
Hey! I'm seeing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in like 4 days from now.
I want to see that movie. I'm really excited about it.
It's gonna be great.
Sonic's
It's
cool. The
gonna
first
be
one was so funny. I want to see it.
But so what is so before we dive into Sailor Moon and Sailor Mercury, I actually am curious because about even just how you build out your cosplays and what's the impetus for you wanting to do a character, because you've done a bunch of characters from video game stuff, some comic stuff, a lot of anime stuff. And so what really says, hey, I want to do character X? Because obviously you've done a bunch of Sailor Moon stuff, which we're going to talk about. But then where do you go from there and say, hey, I want to do said character? And how does the thought pop into your head?
I mean, so it depends on the character, really. So like there is a jacket right here in my background that you might be able to. I'm not gonna wear that. That's not for me to wear. That's for my husband to wear because I can't be a shirtless dude. That's just not gonna work out very well. I mean, there's like these weird silicone chest pieces you can buy, but they kind of creep me out. So I don't want to wear that. But it was one of those things where like I saw this jacket on screen and like I don't know, it was probably the 150th episode of One Piece or something. And I was like,
Oh, you're doing some
I just
Mihawk, eh?
yeah, that's Mihawk. I saw him and I
Just
was
like
like,
that, just
"Oh
like
my
that.
gosh. I love that jacket. Like if I made that for you, would you wear it?" Cuz I just really love the jacket. And he's like, "Well, yes, I would." And I'm like, "Oh, good. That was easy." I'm
So,
very
so
lucky.
to
He lets
even
me
talk
treat
about
him a little
that,
bit like a Ken doll.
to even talk about that, what is that like for you to make a cosplay for somebody else? Because I think people commission other people to do things. I did an Amuro Ray cosplay, and back when I was 19, and I sort of looked a little bit like him because I sort of have an Amuro Ray build, but obviously I'm a
Yeah.
little bit bigger now. But that's not the point here. But I sort of commissioned it out,
hmm
and people do that. And so, what is that like? Because building something for yourself is slightly different than building something for somebody. And obviously, your husband's a little bit different as well
Yeah.
because it is still personal. But if I was
hmm
to go pay you some money and say, "Hey, $400, build me a Mihawk," you
Yeah.
have to be very conscious of a lot of different things
Yeah,
into
I
that
mean
state.
there's some like building for someone else is definitely like it is different than building for yourself. It's a weird balance of like how do I respect my time and their time and and like make sure that they're enjoying the whole process the same. I've only done stuff for like people that I'm pretty close with so far, so it hasn't been like a less personal relationship because I'm like kind of a tech nerd at work, like at my day job. We have someone else who handles that for us, and I wish my hobbies were the same sometimes. Like I was saying, we we have this lady with a communications degree. She's great, and I was telling one of my friends, I was like, "You need one at your work too," and she's like, yes, I do." and and she handles like all the like talking to clients about what the stuff we're building is supposed to be. Um, I'm a programmer in my day job, so she talks
Yeah,
to our clients about what. Yeah,
I don't know what a day job
translating
is.
between like the programmers and the everyone else is an entire job of itself.
I don't know what a job is. I don't know what a day job is because I work at night. Too easy, everybody. Um, but even going into that, and obviously building for yourself and building for your husband, And you haven't really, I don't think you, as you were stating, built for anybody else at the moment yet.
Yeah,
But what is that
just
like for?
props sometimes. Like I like 3D print stuff for other people, but that's like a little bit different. It is fun. I don't do paint jobs very often, but sometimes I do, and it's like I'm always like packing it up like I hope they like it.
So what
As I'm
is
shipping it out.
this? So what is this like? Because obviously cosplay, and I know a lot less about 3D printing, so I'm actually curious with this as well. But cosplay can be very expensive very quickly.
Yes.
Meaning that wigs can be expensive, styling a wig can be expensive, um, fabrics can be expensive, certain materials can be expensive. If you mess up and you got to
Yes.
do it again, that's expensive.
Yeah.
And then there's other stuff too, where substituting materials, finding
Yeah.
materials,
Or
finding
if you're
your
just bad
stuff.
at guessing how much fabric you need and you buy like 4 times as much as you need, like I did when making this jacket.
But,
Like,
but but even to talk about that, like how do you balance the cost? And then also the other thing that I think people don't understand, and this applies to me as well, where people think, oh, you're just doing an hour or an hour and 20-minute interview. No, 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 no. It's me booking it. It's me writing the questions. It's me putting all these photos going through your Instagram that you
yep.
didn't send me, which is fine. Don't,
I
don't worry about
forgot.
it.
I forgot.
It's not a dig. It's not a dig. The point is that it proves the point though that I spent time actually filling up and preparing. So it's 4, 5, 6 hours worth of my time, which is how I prepare for every single
Yeah.
interview. So what is that like? Because it's also your time. So what is that like balancing and even balancing all those components? Because that's something that I think people don't understand about cosplay. Whether you're a professional cosplayer, which I hate that word, or just somebody who says I enjoy this as a hobby.
Yeah, it's like the time is a lot, but also like the time is, you know, that's why I call it my hobby because it's the thing I do to fill my time, right? So I mean like sometimes yes, I am spending many hours hunting on the internet to find like a reasonably priced fabric that I want that I could work with. Like I um or even just something that's remotely what I want because like the actual like the more pinky than the color I have sleeves that he has with the paisley on it. Like I just couldn't find anything like that, but I found something really fitting for the character. It's really cool in the pattern. It's got like crosses that look the same as his sword, and I was like, that'll work. I consulted all of my other One Piece fan friends, and they were like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, yes. So excited. We're going with that then. And but then, of course, I bought like 2 meters of it when I only needed like half of one. So this happens to me almost every time, except I buy way too much fabric and now I have it's behind me. There's an entire other side entire dresser of fabric. A lot of it's leftovers from stuff that I bought too much of.
So and obviously, that's where things get somewhat expensive, and also certain fabrics are just more expensive than other
Yes.
things. Just like
Yes.
anything else in life. I mean, when I deal with comics and I buy and sell comics on eBay, certain books are more expensive than other books just by nature, due to
Yep.
limitations, due to certain things happening in that book, or due to the fact that they don't pop up on the internet. And so it's very, very interesting, with this, and even just figuring out saying, hey, I have X amount of money and that's what I have for my hobby.
Yeah,
And
and sometimes it is a matter of like it's just gonna be that I have to spend like 6 months like gathering like buying supplies over like 6 or 8 months to be able to make something. Or even just because I can't find a color to match. And it can suck, but sometimes it's fun because then like by the time you're getting to actually make the thing, you're just so excited about it that it's like very exciting. But I'm also just like terrible at budgeting my costumes. I'm really bad at it. It's not one of my strong suits. uh, but on the email lists for all the fabric stores, that helps.
That's fascinating. And then they even talk about props because you 3D print things, and I don't know anything about
Yes.
3D printing. I know what a 3D printer is. I know
Yep.
how expensive certain 3D printers can be, but
Yep.
I don't know how to render something, make something out of it, and
Oh,
it's not a skill
it's
that I
complicated.
have.
The learning curve is surprisingly large, although it's the open source community is awesome because you can find someone who's drawn pretty much anything you can think of, and most of them are doing it for free. So like if it's on Thingiverse, you can print it and use it for personal use because most of it's Creative Commons licensed. So that's pretty cool. But it's drawing in 3D is very difficult. I thought it was going to be easy because I'm tech savvy, I can do this, and then it was really hard. I like the first time I went to do it, I sat down for I want to say two maybe 2.5 hours, and I deleted the file when I was done because I was so mad at it, and I've never done that before. like first time I sat down in Photoshop, at the end I was like, I have something cool. Same thing first time I sat down with Illustrator and like every other drawing program I have tried to use, and I just deleted everything when I was done. And that probably happened like the first 3 times.
And so, what is that like? And obviously, it's a big learning curve, but even figuring out
Yeah.
how to do that, because clearly 3D printing props is one way how to go. And I
Yeah.
think is very much the future, because if you understand how to 3D draw something, or even how to get something off of open source and then modify it,
Hmm.
whether you modify it in the program, whether you modify it outside of the program, whether you basically combine gun parts is a good example of
Yeah.
this, where if you know that you're looking to build a certain type of gun and there's a base component of it, and then you're going to say, hey, look, I'm going to 3D print the base and then I'll modify the rest of it
Yeah.
outside of 3D printing because it's impossible for me to draw X, which I think is just another workaround a big problem. And so,
It's really neat. There are some things that I wouldn't recommend 3D printing, like a sword. I One of the first things I wanted to 3D print, I was like, I'm gonna 3D print a sword. It's gonna be so cool. I'm gonna have the best crispy edges. And every sword I've ever tried to 3D print has crack lines from all the seams because it's just hard to not have stress points on the spots where you have to like glue the pieces together. So all my swords that I've 3D printed have cracks in the blades, and so I probably won't 3D print more swords, but my husband's getting good at making them out of wood. So I'm team wooden sword. But there's and I mean the other thing is 3D printing is very slow. It's very slow
now,
is the
doesn't it
only thing.
take like for certain things? Because my understanding of 3D printing is that it's plastic layers essentially,
Yeah. Yeah, like not even a full millimeter at a time. You're printing like partial millimeters usually.
and so you're and then it's building on top, and then it does
Yep.
certain things. It's super fascinating. I've seen 3D printed houses,
Mhm.
um, but they use cement 3D printers in China to build them, and those
Yeah.
things are super cool, and they're dope, and it's amazing. But yeah, no, I don't know much about 3D printing, so
They're
I think
very
it's
slow machines. As actually within arm's reach. Yeah. So I print these guys. A set of 2 of them, and these are Death the Kids pistols from Soul Eater, and they print standing like this, like in if this is the bed of the printer, they print standing up like this, 2 of them side by side, and that takes like 30 hours. And you know, compared to the size of my hand, they're not very big. But it is really cool because smaller props can be like ultra lightweight. Once you get into bigger stuff, you have issues of like the glue adds a lot of weight and stuff like that. So it larger things can actually get pretty heavy, and that's when you would want to go like back to foam instead.
Yeah, no, I find this fascinating, and obviously, I don't know much about 3D printing, so it's super interesting. And obviously, though, I do recognize when things are changing the game in props,
Yeah,
and I get it. In which that I get innovation, I get developments, I get expansion with certain things, and also giving a lot of control to people to build their own props.
yeah,
So obviously, it's fascinating. But I do want to get back to Sailor Moon because
yes,
that's what's going on. And you did Sailor Moon.
yes,
And then
yes.
there's this one.
Yep.
And then I think there's this one too. Oh, that's the other Sailor V, right?
That's Sailor V again. Those are some of the tall shoes that destroyed my legs for a couple of months.
That's Sailor V
But
as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So
Sailor Moon, I made better shoe choices with her.
what was it like doing Sailor Moon? Because obviously everybody
She
knows
was like so fun. She was like I remember like wanting to be her for Halloween when I was like 12 years old, and it I think I might have been with like a costume that we borrowed from someone else, but I also don't remember it very well. It was very many years ago, a long time ago. So it was definitely like this is a childhood dream, and it was like it's super fun. I love wearing her, and it's just like it's so fun to go to the convention and like the little children get excited to see you, and they all want to have their picture taken with you, like like 10 and under, like because the children excitement is just like super cute.
And so what was this build like? Because obviously I think this build happened after the Sailor V, and you had some more
Yes.
experience on you, and it's somewhat of a jump from Sailor V, but it's not a massive jump
Yeah.
from
So it yeah, it's I mean Sailor Moon I had to work with spandex, and spandex is like a a, a pain in the butt. I hate sewing spandex. It's so frustrating to work with. It's like slippery and floppy, and um but yeah, there were some things that were very similar, like like version 2 Sailor V. I had one of the upgrades I had put into her was this really cool stuff called Horsehair Braid that makes it so that the curves of the pleats in the skirt are like really swoopy. Like they don't like fold into like hard corners. They're like smooth curved ruffles, like little figure eight ruffles going around. So there were some things like that I had, made in my upgrade version. And then there's this really great blog by a group of girls from Texas. It's called Cosmic Coterie, and they have like an entire like how to of the entire basic Sailor Scout build, and their instructions are amazing. Like they're so good. Um, and they have like guides for how to do all the hard parts, and it's really really cool.
So what is that like? Because obviously, and this is just me as an outsider. I might be slightly jaded, but I speak to a lot of people, and there's a lot of stuff in the cosplay world that is both good and bad. There's a lot
Hmm.
of drama. I have heard horror stories about people having issues with other people. I've heard people say that girl's a bitch. I don't want to work with her, and then 6 months later they're working together. And then
Yep,
I've also seen a lot of other things happen, and COVID has also rocked the cosplay world,
it
where a
has.
lot of the top 50 cosplayers, a lot of them took a break in COVID, and there's a whole new generation that has taken market share,
Yeah,
and it is massively reflected in those people's numbers on Instagram. Where I mean, Jessica, it's no secret her Instagram has fallen due to the fact that she took a break and it hasn't recovered.
hmm,
And not to put her on blast or anything, and I you can take a break. It's a free country, at least in America it is.
yeah,
But it's the idea that I think that a lot has changed, and so I'm very curious because when you're looking at this blog, a lot of what I feel is popping up is a lot of small people during the middle of COVID have taken market share
yeah,
and have actually said, "Hey, we're for the community." And I think there's been a real challenge. And it's fascinating to me because I get it, because I'm from the indie comic world, and there's been a real challenge in indie comics to mainstream. Now I think mainstream's going to win. Don't think that. And this puts me and everybody and all my friends at odds, because I think Marvel DC are going to beat the shit out of indie comics eventually. But I do think right now there is a challenge from independent creators and the small guys up against the big guys in almost every single sector. And so I'm curious, because that's what this Texas blog almost seems like, saying, hey,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, so
challenged.
I would say like their particular blog, it's been around for a while. They're like, they're not, none of them are under 25. I don't think. I don't know their exact ages, but I'm pretty sure they're all around my age or a little bit older. And they've had it for a long time, this particular one. There used to be some different people in the group, and I don't know, like I
It's a
don't
D
they weren't
word.
on my
It's a D
radar
word.
before that. Like, yeah, they weren't on my radar before that, so I don't know like who all the different people were. But the tutorials they have are like really, really solid, and I think they do have some like up, updated versions that they are like, you have to go on their Patreon for a month or so to get like access to the files and patterns for them. But I think it was only like $5 when I checked, so it's not that bad. But it is just like the actually it reminds me of like the summer pre-COVID. Yaya Han was at a event that I went to, and she was talking about like, because so many people are trying to get into cosplay as more than a hobby now. One of the things she said that just like stood out to me the most was, you have to provide something other than like pretty pictures of yourself if you want to be like relevant forever, because basically she said you're not always going to be as pretty as you are today. Like, people get older, and she herself has done like a very good job of securing herself an income for the rest of her life. She has like lines of fabric and patterns and stuff and books, and it's she was saying that's you need to be
I
looking
talk
at
about
that sort
this
of thing, and I think
all
more
the
people
time.
are realizing that.
See, I talk about this all the time, and this is something that I have a conversation about. And obviously, I buy and sell comics on eBay, and it's no secret what I do. I am what is known as a comic book investor, who then basically takes a non income producing asset and turn it into an income producing asset. So I
Hmm.
take my profits from my book and I turn it into a dividend producing stock. Um, because again, I'm creating income, and then I have monthly, yearly, quarterly, half a year, 3 times a year dividends. And I figured out, because I don't know how to build necessarily a business where I could take because my eBay business is sporadic, but I do sell a
Hmm.
lot. And so I figured out how to create a very lazy passive income stream,
Yeah.
because I get that I'm not going to be beautiful forever. Um, it's something that I think a lot of people have to understand, because it doesn't even go in comics. I talk about this, and I've been on a bunch of shows talking about it, where great, your book's doing great right now. What happens in 3 years if the market
Yeah.
changes? Putting money away for a rainy day is always something, but it's not saving. It's you need to
Yeah.
invest. And I'm a big proponent of the saying, if you don't invest today, you're gonna die broke. And that's where my theory is. So I think Yanahan is very smart in that regard. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, because if your business is solely reliant on Patreon, you are very much a slave to Patreon, and you're a
Hmm.
slave to that business model and to your fans. I like my fans. I appreciate people who watch this, but they are not the only solution
Yeah.
to my dynasty per se. I have customers in other realms. I have other avenues, and that's not saying I don't appreciate any of the people watching. And I know I got my friend Max DeVille watching. I think Pops is watching too. But the idea is, and I appreciate people watching, but I'm not completely enslaved to them. And I think that's something that a lot of people have to wake up. And I
Hmm.
think hopefully COVID has forced that evolution.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I know I like I'm hoping that, you know, like more people are seeing it, but I'm also like sometimes I'm seeing people and I'm like no. Uh, I've just like it. I've seen more than one person turn like 18 or 19, and then like the next day they open an OnlyFans, and I'm like, oh, why? Please, you're
Yeah, you know,
please don't. You're
so
so
let me
young.
ask
You're
you.
only going to like. I'm
Let me ask
sure you
you.
think people your age are looking, but there's probably creepy people looking too, and you don't want
So
that.
let me ask you a question about that because I had this conversation with a few other cosplayers, and at what point, and this is going to sound weird, but at what point does cosplay not become cosplay and does it become softcore porn? And the reason why I asked this question is that it seems to me that we have a bunch of cosplayers who do risque photos, do suggestive photos, they're in sheer clothing, and all of a sudden, where does the line get drawn? Because that's a
I'm.
great question.
I think a lot of them are dancing on that line. It's hard to say, really. I mean, I think, you know, usually the idea of cosplay is that you are a character. And I like to think that maybe if no one can guess the character, you're just in a costume, but
Because I appreciate a sexy Pikachu, which is what Jessica kind of rose in fame wise. And nothing to again put her on blast per se, but all of a sudden, and that's fun because it was Pikachu. But I don't think it was just Pikachu at that point. You
mhm.
know, and you know, I hate to use her as an example. There's others, and I could use like 10 other examples. I mean, I could use Jonahan as an example as well, per se, with
Mhm.
certain like arguments. And that's where this gets tricky because I'm like, okay, is this still cosplay? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It doesn't mean I'm not a fan of it. It doesn't mean I'm not going to buy it. What that means, though, is that is this cosplay and is it really helping the industry per se?
That is the big question. Like I think, you know, most people are probably in it for personal gains, and there are like a lot of, you know, as many people have said, and I will agree with them, that they have made some very like big strides in acceptance for the hobby. But at some point, it is a question of has it come full circle, and are people maybe doing the opposite because now you'll see like these 18-year-olds who think they need to open an OnlyFans on their 18th birthday, which is crazy and kind of sad, really. And how much are
Because
you
I
contributing
mean,
to that? You need to ask
I
yourself,
see it on
right?
Patreon. I see it on Patreon. Risque photos. I see it. And look, you know what is? I mean, I don't know if Max is still watching, but he's a writer and he owns Atrocity Press and he does bad girl art. My friend Naomi Comics does bad girl art. I'm a huge Zenescope fan, so I don't have a problem with bad girl art. I have a problem with integrity, with
Mm-hmm.
intellectual honesty, and that's where I'm getting very intrigued because
Yeah.
you know, and also the idea is that are you, you know, showing your tatas off for the sake of for the character, or are you doing it because you know you want
Probably
to
not.
50 grand of stuff? You're
probably
gonna get
probably it's
attention.
about the money. But
And the reason why I ask all this is because I don't know if this is really helping the industry. Because let's be realistic. I'm in doing this show for myself. I'm doing it because I'm
yeah.
trying to get sponsors, earn money, get my name out there, build my brand. I've been doing it for a long time. But I also understand that I'm giving you a platform at the same time.
Yep.
And I don't believe that somebody has to lose. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, I have to win, you have to lose, but it's self-interest. But also I understand that when I have a sponsor, I have to bring them clients.
Yeah.
So it's in what I like to call equivalent exchange. But and look, you know, if somebody likes staring at a hot girl and it's OnlyFans and she's in a cosplay character, that's
Yeah.
great. But I'll be very
If everyone's choosing consensually to do the thing, then I don't really care that much what you're doing as long as nobody gets hurt. But
but like
sometimes you're starting to wonder if people are getting hurt. And I think maybe we might have crossed that threshold. It's hard to say. Maybe it was a long time ago. I don't really know. But
because
all we
this
can
is
do is really see where it goes.
and also I think that there's a big misperception as well. in cosplay right now. And I think one of the biggest problems is that, oh, you need to have an OnlyFans, you need to have a Patreon, versus saying, hey, look,
Yeah.
let me actually do a legitimate cosplay and have sort of a wholesome position on it. And I think that because you see somebody doing X and then they're making and having a net worth of $10 million, naturally everybody equates and says, oh, I want to do the following and have the same
Yeah.
net worth.
Yeah, or that's what I have to do to be successful. And it's not necessarily. And I mean, I guess it depends how you're defining like success is this thing too. But you know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I can just do what I think is fun and post a couple sexy pictures once in a while and make a living. And well, it's like Yaya Han said, you won't be pretty forever. You can't always do like it's not gonna work long term.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think COVID has proven that. I mean, I guarantee you that the top 50 cosplayers are not doing, and a bunch of them have lost followers, and a bunch of smaller ones have risen up. I know
Mhm.
people who had like 10,000 Instagram followers at the beginning of COVID. They now have 70,000. And I
Yeah.
know people who had like 32,000 Instagram followers, now they have like 500,000. So clearly things have shifted. And then I also know that certain people are now grouping together and they turn off the numbers on their Instagram because it's not good. And I could
Mhm.
also tell you that if you have 4.1 million followers on Instagram and you're only doing 100,000 likes, that's a problem because that's a horrible conversion rate. That's a
It is,
horrible
yeah. And
conversion rate.
it's like it's been a little weird too, I would say, like, you know, as a lot of people have said, the Instagram algorithm has been a little punishing lately. Um,
But it
which is
hasn't
definitely
been.
something that
It
I
hasn't
think it
been lately.
depends on the content you're making. They're like very, very heavily favoring video content right now. So if you're making reels, then they will blast the crap out of whatever you're posting if you're making reels. But if you don't like doing bad lip sync in your house alone, then you might be out of luck.
So I don't think it's even been the idea that lately. I think really since 2020, there's been
Yeah,
a lot of change in Instagram,
since
and
TikTok.
also
Since
TikTok.
TikTok, because they're trying to be TikTok, right? Instagram wants to be TikTok, and it's kind of funny because a lot of the
And
users are like,
also
if I
in
wanted TikTok,
2020,
I'd be
what would
there.
happen is that this was one of the things that actually brought my attention is Hot Topic started sponsoring a lot of cosplayers who had 10 to 11,000 Instagram followers. And they
Yeah.
actually started going away from the people who had over 100,000. And they worked with some of them, but Hot Topic made a conscious decision and said, we're looking at the conversion rate because the C word matters. And
Yeah.
it's not the V word that matters because viewership doesn't mean shit. It's how much can you convert. So if you have a 50% conversion rate and you have 20,000 followers, that's a hell of a lot better because that's 10,000,
Yeah.
people who are going to buy a product. And this is what I see with a bunch of companies is that a bunch of companies 3, 4 years ago didn't want to do business with me because they didn't like my viewership. They didn't like my Instagram numbers. But guess what? I have a tribe, and certain people with certain products will follow my recommendation. And this
Mhm.
is such an interesting thing because there's the C word versus the V word. V word is viewership. C word is not a 4-letter word. I promise everybody. It's called conversion. Conversion.
Yep.
Conversion's a big word. But I'm curious how you feel about that because
So it actually reminds me of something that was going on in like, and maybe it's still going on, but I'm not like paying attention to it anymore in like the 2018 YouTube makeup community where just like all
big
the
part of that. Big part of that
yeah, a
community.
lot like that, but it was, you know, all the creators were suddenly like they were losing tons of trust in their viewership because they weren't always telling you when they got stuff for free. And so like they a lot of people were like, "Oh, like 90% of their videos are like doing reviews of this stuff, but we don't know if they're signing contracts in the background to say it's good no matter what." Right? And I think that like lost a lot of people with huge viewerships just a lot of trust, and I think probably the same thing happened in cosplay and that, you know, then people seeing like Hot Topic or whatever sending free stuff to like small people who will actually like answer their DMs and things like that if they were to do it. And suddenly they're seeing this from a voice that feels more trustworthy because it's someone who might actually talk to them.
It's that too, and it's also the idea that if somebody has 15,000, Instagram followers, I feel like I could reach out to them and they'll be on my show. I
Yeah.
feel like they're a human being. And this is gonna sound messed up. Once you reach like 500,000 Instagram followers, you might be a nice person, but you're a guest at a con and you're being paid.
Hmm.
Like it changes the relationship. And look, I know that's not to say somebody shouldn't be a guest at a con and not be paid. I'm all for free capitalism. I want to be paid at cons
Yeah.
for my knowledge and my skills. Don't think I don't. The reason why I want to be paid is because it takes me away from other things I could be doing. Legitly playing video games and drinking beer is
Yeah.
what it's going to take me away from. So I deserve to be paid for having to be an adult and be in a con environment. And I'm very honest about it. It's also travel. It's also time away from my family. It's time away from doing
Yep.
what I want to do and running this project. So naturally, I would like to be paid to make up my losses. I'm not being paid to talk. I'll
Hmm.
talk for free. I think Ronald Reagan said, "You don't pay me to act. You pay me to wait around." Be seen. And whether you like Reagan or not, the statement rings true because the point he's trying to make is that obviously it's all the time between me doing what I want to do for free that you have to pay me
Hmm.
for.
Yeah, that's a really funny statement because it just reminds me of like I'm in the on call rotation for like my area at work. So like maybe like 2 or 3 times a year I'm like forced to do it, but I do it more often than that because they pay me a lot of money to do it when they do. And a lot of it is like, if they call like they pay me for being available for the week, but a lot of the time it's like a lot of the time that they pay me for is time that I'm idle because they have a minimum amount of time they have to pay me for every time they call me. So most of the time it is, just it's them paying for my availability and to make sure that nothing terrible is happening.
No, it makes sense, and I think that's a big thing. And I think cons are going to learn that lesson really quickly in the next few years. I
Hmm.
really do. I think a lot of people are in for a rude awakening. So I think the economy and a bunch of things have changed because of COVID. But
Yeah.
we can talk about that in a second. 'Cause I do want to talk about Sailor Mercury.
Oh yes, Sailor Mercury. So she was like my kind of this winter project. My most recently completed scout.
So what's the deal? Because they got the planets wrong in Sailor Moon.
Huh. Well, I mean, Pluto's kind of a planet still. If there's a
Yeah,
scalar scout, it's a planet, right? That's how it works.
it's a planet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On Wednesdays and Fridays, it's not a planet. And on Monday, it's undecided.
But she's one of the coolest Sailor Scouts. She has time powers. She can stop time. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I do like so when Sailor
Uh,
Pluto is like motherly and it's like the big sister
yeah.
that you always wanted. But what was this like to do Sailor Mercury? Because obviously, you're doing them in order at this point,
Yeah.
all the Sailor Scouts.
I
And
mean,
so
there was definitely an element of Sailor Mercury. Yes, I look great in blue, and that's because I mean Moon. The bangs are a little awkward. They don't look amazing on like no one looks their cutest with Sailor Moon's bangs. Is my opinion. But I I do really like how Mercury's wig looks on me, and also it's like the lowest maintenance wig I own. I just toss it in a box, like my box with her other stuff, and when it's time to wear, I just pull it out of the box and like shake it, and it's ready to put on my head, which is great because a lot of my other ones it's like I pull it out of the box and I'm like, oh, I have to get my flat iron out and re-straighten this or recurl this because it's smushed. Um, so it's nice that she's a little lower maintenance, and I mean she doesn't have the little sleeve rolly things that the other ones have, which when when we're making them, everyone calls them sleeve tacos because it's the way you make them. There's like some really thin couch foam inside that is then wrapped in the spandex, and you fold it up like a taco. It's shaped like a taco, and then you sew it on. She doesn't have sleeve tacos. They're annoying to make, so that was nice.
And even to go off of this, because obviously you're going through doing the entire Sailor Scouts,
Yeah.
and you've done Sailor V, Sailor Moon, you're on Sailor Mercury, and then you have those cosplays on call, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And then obviously you're going to be doing Sailor Mars, Jupiter,
Yep.
Venus, and then I
Yep.
don't know how far you're going to go down the road with
We'll
Uranus.
see. We'll see how far I get.
Neptune.
I think
Well,
I think technically Pluto would come after Venus. Venus then Pluto. Because she's the next one introduced in the
Oh man, it's been forever.
not planetary order, but she's the next scout who comes into the story.
But what is that like? Because that adds a lot of, I think, ability, because all of a sudden what happens, and you've seen it, I've seen it, where a group's like, anybody going to such and such con, we need a Sailor Mars.
Yeah.
We need a Sailor Venus. We need a Sailor Jupiter. Hey, our Sailor Moon's out. We need a Sailor Moon replacement. And all of a sudden,
so that's kind of the fun of it, right? Because I mean, one of the things that is so fun about being a Sailor Moon character is you're bound to meet another Sailor Moon character when you are out. So it is like even where I am I'm like near Toronto. So Toronto's within driving distance for me. And in Toronto there is a convention that is now just called Pretty Heroes, but it used to be called the Sailor Moon Celebration, and so it's just a magical girl convention. It is like and that one is a really fun one to go to. That's actually where most of the moon photos you sent were taken. They were in one of the gardens there. They do it at the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center. It's pretty cool. They get a cool venue, and they put on like crazy amounts of panels for the size of the con, because it's usually only like a 3,000 or less head count event. It's super small, and it's all people who are like very enthusiastic about Sailor Moon usually. So it's a good time, and it's a fun one to dress in Sailor Moon clothes for.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and obviously you got a bunch of other Sailor Moon stuff coming down the road.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but I do want to back out of Sailor Moon. I do want to talk about some other stuff you've done, and we're gonna do this slightly quickly with the first one, because I am a huge Fullmetal Alchemist fan.
Hawkeye. Those are also 3D printed guns. I didn't 3D print those ones. I didn't have a 3D printer at the time, but so I didn't make those ones. I had friends who had a printer make them for me, and I painted them and stuff. And now I'm not allowed to take them to some cons because they're a replica of a modern weapon, which is apparently.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because obviously I used to frequent Anime Boston. I don't know if you know the story about Anime Boston. What happened there?
I don't know.
Okay, so Anime Boston was one of the impetuses for having metal detectors at certain cons on the East Coast.
Okay.
There was a Pokemon tournament, and pretty much two groups got into a scuffle. Some guys drove back to their home state in Kentucky all in one night, got a bunch of guns, and tried to bring it into that con / that tournament. And so now at the convention center up in Boston, they have metal detectors.
That's
huge
probably like reasonable.
You go into that con, yeah, it's a long line to get into that con.
And you know, like most events around here are okay with orange tips, like as long as you paint the orange tips on them, or like if your weapons have orange tips. The ones I have for those are removable, but I think I threw them out because I can't take them anywhere anymore anyway. But
just don't ask. Don't entertain that. Just don't. For those who can't see it, I'll read the comment. Obviously, it says no machine gun for Mary Machine Gun lame. For the people on the podcast side of this, obviously that's my friend Max DeVille for you. But yeah, no, because what is that like though? All jokes aside, and Mary can
Yeah,
tell me from
so the last time I tried to take them to an event that, they told me I wasn't allowed to have them at an event anymore, they zip tied them into the holsters so I couldn't take them out. This was at Anime North. They're like notoriously the pickiest event around. Most of the other ones are like less so, but it's just not as fun to not be able to like, pull them out and pose with them. So I don't really take them anywhere anymore. And I would also have to cut my hair again to be her unless I wanted to make a whole wig for her. But I kind of like that I don't have to wear a wig for her because that makes her way comfier. Also, the shoes for that outfit, we got we both got boots for those at the Army Surplus store, and those are like the comfiest shoes I own. They snuck into my regular wardrobe. I wore them as winter boots all winter this year in like the snow and stuff. They're great.
And then obviously it's Full Metal Alchemist, so everybody knows Full Metal Alchemist. And Full Metal
Yeah.
Alchemist is an anime that is definitely my generation. And
Mhm.
it's sort of, I think, because it came out like 2011, 2012, and then the first one came out even earlier.
Yep.
And so one of the things that's very cool is, obviously, but like the new generation, some people know it in the new generation of anime that's coming up and some don't. So it's kind of a nice throwback of a show
Mhm.
for me, and I like when people do it, and I like
Yeah.
when cosplayers do it because I think it's kind of fun. And I actually just watched Brotherhood like 3 months ago, fully done, and I did it in like 60 days, which was crazy.
Nice.
Um, but I do want to jump and talk about Avatar,
Yeah.
and we've done this one right here,
Yes,
and then same
that's my
same
Suki
different,
outfit. Yep.
and this is how this thing was made.
Okay, yeah. So that's not even the armor. That is a prototype for the armor. So, because my husband made me that armor out of leather. Like the real deal is leather armor, and it's super heavy. And I've only gotten to wear it once because those pictures were taken like January 2020. So I've only worn her out once because we went into COVID lockdowns 2 months later, and it's a lot of work to get into that outfit. There's like a lot of string involved, and it takes a while. The makeup takes a while, and then getting into the armor takes a while because it's all tied together like samurai armor and made of leather, and it's very heavy. But the sleeve pockets are amazing. I love the sleeve pockets. You can shove so many things in those sleeves.
So what is that like? Because obviously it's a very intense cosplay to wear, but
Yeah.
it's different than I think the Sailor Moon and a few others that you've done because it's a different intensity to some degree, and also it's also more involved with makeup and other
Yeah.
things of that nature as well. So because one of the things that I think people don't understand is that if you're doing a 3-day con, you have to plan accordingly. You
Yep.
can't paint yourself green on day one and then be like, I guess, She-Hulk. You could be Gamora the next day if you painted yourself green. But
But you might not be able to get the green off by Sunday.
then
Yeah.
you have to be
Yeah.
Invader Zim on Sunday and then you're good.
Yeah. The was it all the black was it the black is just I usually just use eyeliner for that. And it can be really hard to get that off my eyebrows. It could be very hard to get all of that out. Luckily, the event that I wore that to that time was only one day, and I have the same problem with my Jolyne outfit. The eyebrows just never want to come off. They take like 3 or 4 washes. Yeah, yeah, those don't like to come off.
So,
um,
so, to even talk about this one as well, because obviously JoJo is a massive show.
yeah,
And I'm going to be very honest. I have not gotten around to watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's just never happened. It's been just one of those things where it's just like
it's a lot, and like part one is hard to get through. Like part
I didn't
one's
even
rough.
try. it's confusing to me, JoJo, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff going on, and then like there's his grandson, and then there's him, and then all
Yep.
this other stuff, and then like the rivalry is
They're all JoJo.
and it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre, and I appreciate what it's done. And this is not testing its credibility as an anime, but there's just so much content with it as well.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, do I really want to dive down this rabbit hole?
I mean, so like I was introduced to Jolyne when like reading her, because when I started that, the anime wasn't out yet, and we've still only got like a few episodes right now. But I had finished watching what was available to be watched of the rest, and I was really like nervous too, because I was like, I don't know how this writer is gonna do with a female protagonist. We'll see. And then I was just like, I suppose since it's a comic, love at first panel. Like I immediately loved the character, and she was so great. And then when they were, doing the anime, I had like another really, really big, daunting project I was in the middle of, and so I had made her wig at that point with that picture and did like a makeup test, but then I kind of waited around because I was like, I need to finish this other thing first, and I was like holding out on working on that outfit as like a reward for myself for finishing the one that I was having a hard time finishing because it was so big.
Yeah. So and there's only one of two cosplays that can be. It's this one.
No, not that one actually. That was much older. But yeah, she was
Or
also
this.
that's the one. That is the one. Yeah, Violet was like I was in over my head at the time. Like she was definitely beyond my skill level. But Amy was like I was ready for that, but she was just a big job. Very, very daunting to make and hard to wear. She's a chore to wear.
Yeah, that one's pretty intense because it's Amy Soul from obviously Soul Calibur. I probably got the
Yep.
name wrong because I haven't played Soul Calibur in years. Great,
Yes. I
great
had
game.
not played it in years either, and then 6 came out, and I was like, oh my god, I want to be a Soul Calibur character, like, do my nostalgia dream. And then I was like, there were like a couple designs I liked, but like none that I loved. And then the Amy DLC came out, and I was like, oh, that's the one. That's the one. And then it took me like 2 years to make the outfit because it was a lot. There were just so many pieces, and there was a lot of difficult sewing, and hoop skirts are
There's a
challenging.
lot of stuff going on with that one, and it looks intense. It seems intense. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts to it, and yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff going on with that cosplay.
There really is. Although like just like it could be a lot more difficult to wear, to be honest. Like when I so that day when I took it out for those pictures to get, which was like kind of my trial run, really, because like if if you can make it happen, it's best to not wear the outfit for the first time at an event if you can swing it, because knowing what's going to go wrong ahead of time is always better. And there were like some things I had to fix. Um, Nothing that like a little bit of glue could not fix. There were some hoop skirt malfunctions that we worked through. But then the next time I wore it out, like I should have. Well, I'm gonna pack body tape with that outfit next time because the socks didn't want to stay up. Luckily, someone like another cosplayer who was boothing saved me because they had lots of tape and lots of different kinds of tape. And by that point, I was not feeling like caring what kind of tape it was. So there was tape to hold my socks off, and I had a much better day after that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with this cosplay and a lot of this stuff. Um, and obviously, I've missed a bunch of your cosplays. I missed your Black Canary, which I'm going to briefly show right
Yep.
here. That's your Black Canary. That's your
Yep. That's
She-Ra.
the same boots as the Hawkeye Black Canary. And actually, Black Canary and She-Ra are the same wig too.
She-Ra.
Yep.
Obviously, this is Zelda, for those
Yep.
who are interested. Another Zelda right there. This is Fallout right there, which is just fun. It would have been
Yep.
great if PNG did that entire thing out, and I should have. I was so tempted to. I should have. It would have been so brilliant.
Yeah,
And
the
then,
Fallout ones were really, those started as like a Halloween costume. The first, like, those started as a set of Halloween costumes, and then I didn't have a sewing machine at the time that we had done those initially, so they were like Halloween, like coveralls that we had bought on Amazon in yellow duct tape to start with, and then, you know, when those had like 2 Halloweens worth of wear and all the tape was coming off, I like peeled them up and just like pasted it onto paper and made it like directly into a pattern for sewing with. So those were actually really fun to make and not too difficult.
And then obviously there's also, you know, Violet Evergarden and that one, which is just way too intense to talk about. That's a whole different episode by itself.
I was in over my head when I made her. But I had loved the show, and yeah, the jacket was like cannibalized from something I got at the thrift store because that was a lot of work, and the dress was difficult and kind of a mess. It didn't really make it through more than like one wear, but I learned a lot of things, and that's the important part.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and then I'm missing probably a bunch that you know where because I think you did like Bubbles once, and then you've done a few others.
Yeah, that was also like cannibalized thrift store dress, really really early stuff. That's been a long time ago.
And so there's a lot of other stuff, and clearly that's sort of everything that you've done. And obviously, I recommend everybody checking out your Instagram because the 4 or 5 that I missed, you know, only have a few photos out, so I figured we would skip some of them. But I do want to back out of your cosplays, and I am curious, and we touched upon it a little bit, but where do you think cons are going with cosplay? Because COVID has changed the game and has forced an evolution.
Yeah.
And
I mean, around here, we've had a couple of big ones again, like 1 or 2, since we had like a company that normally puts on one of the big ones, put on like a very small for them event in the fall, and like it looks like, you know, fingers crossed, Anime North is coming back this summer, which is kind of like the one that everyone looks forward to the most around here because it's just different. It's a lot of fun, and it's I think everyone thinks it feels like less corporate-y, and I half the event is like in a parking lot, so I'm pretty sure even like lots of the times tons of people go without even buying passes ever and just don't go in the dealer's room. So it's like, you know, Anime North holds a special place in everyone's heart, I guess. So a lot of people are really excited for that to come back, but I think there is, like, I would say something interesting, at least with like some of the younger generation who haven't been to like a con before. That'll be interesting. Like I'm interested in seeing, and I almost wish I had a better insight of it, like what it's going to be like for them who've only seen it on TikTok when they go to a real con, because I think a lot of the time that, you know, there are all these, you know, they see like the biggest names on Instagram, and they don't know that there's, you know, at least one, but maybe even a handful of people probably in their own city who are just as talented, or, you know, who have worked just as hard to be just as good and just aren't on social media.
So I had a friend, and he put up a very interesting post. He said there was this violinist who was standing outside in the subway in New York City, and what he was saying is that 45 minutes he only raised $30 in tips. The very next night he was playing violin in a theater where the minimum ticket price was $100 minimum. Sold the place out. Meaning, and what he said is that talent, a lot of times it's not the talent, it's the environment. Where all of a sudden it's the idea that if I say, hey, to get on my show, you have to pay me $50, and that's the attitude, and I start rejecting people who don't pay me, people might have a different attitude with me, and all of a sudden it might attract a different clientele. And so and then you set up an environment that's very different. And so it's, I think, something that's a very interesting concept about people in society is that somebody says, oh, I look at this big name, and they don't realize that the person right next to you is just as talented. People say, oh, people think, I have 100,000 Instagram followers and I work for myself. That I have more time to myself and that I didn't work hard to get here. I'm like, no. I work just as hard as somebody who has 1 million followers with their podcast. It's just, you got lucky. You were there first. You had a niche first. But you can't.
Or maybe they're just better at social media, because social media is a skill of itself.
Or maybe, you know what it is? If they hit a niche and they figured something out and they got there first. But I look at other interviewers and I'm like, I don't think your interview skills are where I'm at. And also, though, I tend to be uncensored. I tend to dive into controversial things. I ask difficult questions and I ask real questions. And look, there are people who are now saying, I'm just discovering you for the first time in 10 years. Where have you been? And so, I think very much it's not hard work or talent. I think it's environment and it's exposure.
Yeah. So, and that is one of the reasons I'm so interested in seeing what happens, especially this year when all the kids who haven't seen, especially they're, I mean, not that the kids are going to be interested in this anymore because J.K. Rowling got canceled, but there is a group of 50-year-olds in Toronto who have the most amazing Harry Potter professors group. They're so good. I keep looking at them every time I see them and I'm like, I want to be those old, I want to be as cool as those old people someday.
I think that J.K. Rowling, though, I don't think she's canceled. I don't. I think it's a minority that's acting like the majority, but nobody gives a fuck. Really, nobody cares.
It is one thing where I'm I don't even know how to describe to these younger people how big of a thing this was for, multiple generations at the same time before they remember. And that's kind of the weird part about it. I'm like I can't even think of anything else that has had
there's one
the multi-generational impact except maybe Superman, but that's because he's been running for 50 years.
Right now, the biggest book event ever is going on Kickstarter. It's raised about $45 million on Kickstarter for 4 secret novels. Now, I was speaking about this with somebody last night. We were talking about it, and I'm going to speak about it with my guest in 20 minutes after you. And one of the things is that is transcending and is Harry Potter level, because it has never been done before, which is what Harry Potter was. But yeah, I think that there's a small minority that's acting like the majority that really nobody cares about, because I don't think Harry Potter's canceled. I don't care.
I mean, even if you don't support the author, you can still buy the books at the thrift store instead.
Oh no,
because they're good books, right?
I support the author.
No, I mean that's what I want to say to the kids though. Even if you want to just read the book and not support her, get it at the thrift store, because you can do that. And she doesn't get
royalties through your thrift store. Just buy it from corporate America, buy it from your bookstore, buy it from Amazon, and then buy a second copy from Amazon, because you might as well make Amazon rich. Or buy it from Barnes & Noble, or buy it from a corporate bookstore, because nothing says I hate Harry Potter more than buying it from a corporate bookstore. Don't worry about making corporations rich, because you're not doing any of that. Wink, wink. So, and this is how you fight the power. And then you should burn both copies, and then you should realize that you didn't go far enough, and then buy another 2 copies of the book and a whole set of the 2 copies of the book, So you bought 4 copies and burned those, and then realized you want to read it the next day, so you got to buy a
Don't
5th copy.
forget to like whisper some unforgivable curses to those books before you burn them. But
I'm just saying.
that is the thing. I don't even know how to describe to younger people who didn't experience it that like for when I was in the 1st grade, I went to a birthday party to see this movie. Like we went to the first movie as like my friend's birthday party, and I did the same thing in the 12th grade. We went to the movies to see the last one for my friend's birthday, and that is like it literally went with me through my entire school career. And and my mom was reading it too. Like it wasn't just, and I don't even know, like I'm sitting here, I'm like, do I tell the kids it was bigger than Minecraft? Will they get that? Is that speaking their language?
It is fascinating, and I think it's a bunch of hyperbole, and I think a bunch of people are just acting like 4-year-olds, and it is what it is. But again, I'm sure me and my guest in 20 minutes are going to have a very interesting conversation about this and culture and a bunch of other stuff. So, and oh, he knows it's coming. It's coming. A bunch of people know it's coming. It's going to be a fun interview. But I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself because we've been talking for almost an hour and a half. I missed a bunch of your cosplays. I did not get to half the comic stuff, Zelda, She-Ra, but talking about shields and swords and all sorts of stuff. But where could people find you? Where could people find your Instagram? Where could people support your work? All that fun stuff.
So I am on Instagram as Suzie Cosplays. I am also on Twitter as Suzie Cosplays, but not very active there. I have a secondary Instagram account for my 3D printing funsies. That's Bits of Tomorrow 3D. And on Etsy, the shop is called Bits of Tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I have the Etsy thing up in the link, everybody. So if you would like to buy something from that Etsy shop, you are more than welcome to do so easily. It will follow all throughout wherever this podcast lands. So obviously you can check that out in that fashion. And I'm going to be very honest with everybody. You have to support indie content creators. What that means is that if they have an Etsy shop or they have commissions open and you need something done, well, you have options where you want to shop and supporting indie people and people who do this type of stuff and have a small following can help them basically do their next cosplay and help them get along further, as well as you need to follow them on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook pages, all that stuff, because that does make a huge difference. And you actually, when you follow them, you need to like their posts because that is just as important as following somebody, is actually actively commenting and sharing out when you can. And social media is free. You're not obligated to buy something, but social media is free. And it doesn't take a hell of a lot to give somebody a little heart on Instagram. And I can tell you, it makes my day when people do it with my content. So, and it sounds corny, it sounds weird, but give me a thumbs up, give me a like. It makes me feel good, and it didn't cost you anything. Even if you think I'm bad, it doesn't cost you anything. As far as I'm concerned about me, obviously, I appreciate shares, comments, likes. You should go check out a bunch of my friends who have a bunch of Kickstarters going on and really cool stuff that's coming down. You should watch every single one of my interviews. You have approximately 310. So if this is your first time watching and seeing this show, you have 309 more interviews to watch, which is probably about 400 hours of content. So get cracking, everybody. But all jokes aside, I do have an eBay store. It's in the description above. I buy and sell really expensive and rare comics. So go check that out. You can go buy my t-shirt. You can go buy my metal card. And if you feel inclined, you can buy me a coffee because, well, I'm fan supported and I appreciate all donations to this show because it helps make things happen and it means a lot. And what I'll do with that coffee is actually continue to improve upon this show because there are several improvements that are needed, such as a camera, lights, as well as making sure that I have money in August to keep the show going, to continue to interview people. So I appreciate all support in any format, cash or social media because it does go a long way. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
All right, then. I guess check out my store, check out his store, and have a good evening.
I believe that's a wrap, everybody.